So today's the day that schools across New York City can start submitting their detailed plans for resuming classes in the fall. Earlier this week, though, Governor Cuomo announced the basic threshold that will need to be met before any public school reopens. Take a listen.
Schools will reopen if that region is in phase 4 and the daily infection rate remains 5% or lower over a 14-day average. There are then state guidelines as to how that school reopens.
All right, joining us to break this down and explain what this means for the 1,700 public schools in our area is New York City Schools Chancellor Richard Carranza, who's clearly a coffee drinker, judging by the mugs behind him. Good morning, Chancellor. How are you?
Good morning, Betty. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. I want to get to the bottom of this because I think there's a lot of confusion here. So do the state guidelines released earlier this week differ much from the proposals that you and the mayor presented last week?
Not at all. So what the governor is talking about are the conditions under which we can even consider opening schools. What Mayor de Blasio and I have been talking about are the detailed plans about once the decision is made to open schools, what will schools look like? What will the schedules look like? What will the cleaning look like? All of the precautionary protocols look like. So our plans are about the details. The governor's talking about what are the conditions under which we can open schools.
Gotcha. So school principals have until what, July 31st to submit their detailed reopening plans to the state. How long before parents know what the plan is for their child, especially given that Governor Cuomo says he's waiting, what, until August 1st or the first week of August to make a final decision on schools?
Well, parents have to have information to be able to plan their lives. And if you listen to what the governor said, he said there are two basic conditions. The region must be in phase 4. New York City is supposed to be in phase 4 on Monday and have an infection rate lower than 5%. We've been hovering at 2% in New York City. So, all of the indicators are all systems go for September. Understanding that, though, parents should know what their child's schedule will look like by August. And that's important. We know that's important. Yes.
Okay. Can you give us a date, a time in August?
I believe that the timeline for notifying parents is going to be August 7th. And remember, because of the social distancing requirements, the health and safety requirements, we cannot have all of the students in a school building at the same time. Right. So we've developed various models of how we can. Some assume that 50% of the students will be able to be in the building. Some assume that a third of the students will be in the building. So principals right now are programming their schools based on their student numbers and based on what parents have told us in terms of whether or not they're coming back to in-person learning or they prefer to stay in remote learning, and making those decisions based on what's best for their schools. They'll submit them to us, and then we submit to the state as part of our larger package of reopening.
Now, I'm glad that you mentioned August 7th because that's also the deadline for families to opt for fully remote learning. You just mentioned that there's this blended plan for students, but I have to tell you, as a parent of a child who's trying to do the remote learning, it has been a tough go. And this is tough for working parents because to some extent with this blended system, right, you're asking parents to make a decision of whether you can go back to work or if you should stay home to care for your child. So what do you say to parents who have that dilemma?
Tremendous empathy for our parents. This has been one of the most difficult time periods in public education in the history of our country. So we have tremendous empathy for them. However, nobody wants to lose a child, and nobody wants to lose an adult that they care for. So this is about health and safety first. And the models that we put forward try to give some modicum of consistency to parents. So, for example, if a student chooses to have in-person learning, they will know that every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they will be in-person learning at school. So now parents know, okay, so what do I do for Thursdays and Fridays? That it's not ideal, but we're picking from a portfolio of really bad options. We're trying to pick the least bad option. But with that said, just yesterday, Mayor de Blasio announced that the city is committed to providing over 100,000 spaces for childcare, working with our sister agencies in the city, also our community-based organizations. That is because we recognize that in the scenario I gave you on that Thursday and Friday, if a parent has no other options, is there a child care or child space for their student. So again, we're trying to be as responsive as we can. But listen, I'm not gonna tell parents that these are our perfect choices.
Yeah.
The health and safety has to come first, and that means that there are some imperfect choices that we're trying to make as palatable as possible.
Well, because even with the childcare options, you still have to worry about the social distancing. How safe is that? So some of the same issues come into play there. How concerned are you, though, that remote learning puts children at an educational disadvantage?
Well, it's not. You can never replace a well-trained, caring teacher, well-equipped teacher in the classroom with students. I mean, you can't replace that. Unfortunately, we are in a pandemic that has killed hundreds of thousands of people in the United States. So we have to keep our children and our adults that serve our children safe. So that means that we are continuing to learn. We know that some students have actually thrived in a remote learning setting, but we also know that some students have not. And that's what keeps us all up at night. But you're really weighing the educational benefit versus the health and safety benefit. Look, we can help students make up academic ground. We cannot bring back a student that unfortunately is infected and passes away, or an adult. So these are life and death decisions that we have to weigh very heavily. But we also recognize that there are some very unfair trade-offs that we have to consider based on the circumstances that we're in.
Well, like you've said in the past, there are no perfect choices here, but I do have to bring this into the fold because the Trump administration is putting the pressure on schools to reopen. During the White House press briefing on Thursday, the press secretary had this to say. Take a listen.
The president has said unmistakably that he wants schools to open, and I was just in the Oval talking to him about that. And when he says open, he means open and full, kids being able to attend each and every day at their school. The science should not stand in the way of this.
Okay, very important what she said there at the end. What is your take that science should not stand in the way of schools reopening?
I don't even know what to make of that. All I can say is this. We are basing all of our decisions around the in-person learning based on the science, based on what the scientific experts are telling us, epidemiologists are telling us. We are being guided by the science, not by science fiction. So we're going to continue to be guided by the science because the health and safety of our students and adults is critically important.
And speaking of science, the CDC is expected to release guidelines for safely opening schools soon. How much of an effect will that take when it comes to you considering how to go forth with your plans?
Well, unless the guidance is markedly different from what they've already told us, we are right in line with what CDC guidelines are. In fact, we're very much in line with what the World Health Organization guidelines are. We know that there are schools across the globe that have reopened. But the big difference is, and New Yorkers should be very proud because we've washed our hands, we've worn our masks, we've taken care of social distancing, we have flattened the curve. So of the 10 largest school systems in America, there are only 2 that can even consider reopening for in-person learning. That's New York and Chicago. Everybody else has seen a spike. And those other countries where schools have reopened, they have only reopened because they have flattened their curve as well. So we're going to do it safely, and we're going to obviously look at what those guidelines are, but we don't expect any differences in what we're already planning for.
Well, there's a lot riding on this for sure, being the nation's largest school district. Chancellor Carranza, I got to tell you, we need to get you a PIX11 coffee mug to put on your wall behind you.
Hey, I'll put it right up. I've got a space.
All right, sending it over today. I might even hand deliver it. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.